Okay, take two.
Take two indeed. Call me in the morning.
Truly the fuckery that happened to us last recording to do our usual fourth wall breaking was like in the middle of our shit. And like, at least this time it was within the first like 10 seconds. So.
Right.
Are we just getting better at failing? Is that what this is?
As every podcast does. That's
we're
true.
a special case. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
It is.
We have been in this game long enough to know that's exactly how this whole thing works. We just don't know the other side of stopping the fail.
We're the OGs of failing.
Damn straight.
It's a badge of pride or something. Yeah, we had stuff to talk about, and we're going to talk about it, but we're going to do the intro thing first. I actually thought today it's time. It is beyond time for us to do an intro.
What do you mean by an intro? Like one of our old school like things that has nothing to do with what we're about to talk about?
Exactly. Yeah, like irreverent, goofy, annoying, more than likely. Like one of those.
So you're saying you want a prompt for a 20-minute improv bit that never actually like goes anywhere, but goes everywhere.
Truthfully, that's what I was hoping for, because I didn't actually like write an intro. I just thought it would be cool to have one.
That it sounds like a distant dream that we could do, a goal to put in front of us that most may never achieve, but for that special few with the determination, the drive, and dare I say moxie to write an intro and introduce this podcast, which thematically goes very well with this particular episode of the Fairly KickAss podcast.
How did you pull it together? How did this man, Stitcher and Headgum and Earwolf, the number is live. Operators are standing by.
If you're going to set a beach ball on a tee, I can't not take a swing at it.
Well, that was home run derby-esque, dare I say myself. And we come to you in the week of the home run derby. Shout out to baseball player who won. I don't know. I don't pay attention. And shout out to the two of you, Dan and Jay, and myself, Zach, as we embark on yet another of our top 5 episodes. This one with a slightly different feel, maybe, depending on kind of how we took it. I feel like we may have taken it in directions. First off, just the premise, which in and of itself is fairly straightforward. Top 5 albums that would make you want to start a band. A little heavy in the mouth, sure, but y'all get the general premise, as we are kids or adults and we're, sitting around and thinking, and what if I was on that stage? What if I had all the spotlights and the microphones? What if I was selling out concert halls? What are the albums that would lead me to that fantasy? And maybe the fantasy is different. It certainly took different directions for me. But I'll kick it off to you, Dan, since you and I were kind of talking before the show. What did this list kind of in general mean to you? Kind of how did you approach it in as much as you care to share before getting into your list?
Well, not just the approach, because I think it is generally kind of I think we both took an idea of it, and you and I are going to have 2 very different lists. And then our third list is going to be a lot more real, or I assume, unless Jay has taken a completely different track on this. But the main difference is that when we talk about records that made us want to start a band, for you and I, Zach, that was a thing, as I mentioned, that was that far off dream, and that never happened. Jay can't say the same thing, especially the never happened part. And also a band, because the singular would be vastly underestimating the amount of work that he's done in the industry.
For real.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. So I took it in a way. I took it in a direction. It is largely a very personal list. Yes. but I was trying to avoid some of the ones that were so personal that they make no sense to anybody else. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to pick the one that was like, oh, that is my nothing on my list is my hugest inspiration. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But they were, I went a direction. Let's put it that way. I will talk more when we get to the list.
Fair.
About what it was. Zach, did you have roughly the same experience with creating this list that Dan did?
I don't know, to be totally honest. Like, I was initially going to play this pretty straight and think of, you know, the song or the albums that gave that sort of vibe, that sort of feeling of being in, you know, Madison Square Garden or whatever the Staples Center is called these days, you know, being in like a huge arena in a huge stadium and those kinds of anthemic albums. And then it became something entirely different. Just like you, Jay, it's going to be self-explanatory as we get into it. But yeah, I will say that I have no idea how it morphed into this, but I'm really happy it did. I'm for once really stoked about the way that this went and really stoked with what I came up with.
Awesome. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, same. Jay, do you want to go ahead and kick us off? And this is fairly selfish because I'm so curious about yours and Dan's list that I would like to go third, but I certainly don't have to. But yeah, I'm being selfish. So
you know, it's fine. It's fine. I almost never kick off, so this is the odd man out for me. That's fine.
Oh, perfect. Heck yeah.
I'm going to start with my number 5 record. First of all, these are in no particular order. It's top 5 as I thought of them. I did not actually rank these 5, and I started with 1994 because that was very formative for me as a burgeoning musician. I'd really, you know, I was playing 3 different rock instruments at that time, none of them well. Spoiler alert, I didn't get better. The one that made me feel like I could be in a band and it made it feel attainable is Weezer's Blue album. There's very few like flashy guitar parts. There's very few guitar solos. None of them are flashy. Nothing's designed to intimidate you. Nothing is a larger than life persona. There's no sense that the songs are impossible to recreate. And instead, they're built on these powerful, crunchy chords and unforgettable melodies. And it's lyrics that embrace awkwardness instead of trying to hide it, which appealed to me as a young teenager. But it was sincere, and it was just as that nerdiness was just as compelling as a form of swagger could be because of how sincere it was. For me, what makes Blue such a start a band album, yes, I did abbreviate it to Blue, it invites you into that world. They weren't trying to be rock gods. They sounded like regular people who just happened to write really cool songs. And every one of the tracks on that record reinforces the idea that personality and songwriting and chemistry mattered far more than technical perfection. I imagine I'm not alone here. It must have inspired countless garage bands because it quietly answered a question that so many aspiring musicians ask themselves, which is, what if I just wrote the songs I wanted to hear? And the result is this album that still makes you want to call a couple friends, clear out the garage, and see what you can create together.
That's really cool. I think you hit the nail on the head. And I say this, it's not at all an insult, and it's not even meant to diminish or lessen the album, but I feel like many of us could have written the Blue album.
Yeah.
Because it's so approachable. It's so something, maybe not no one else, because I can't stand that fucking song, but like the rest of the tracks, they're not going to win awards. And for that reason, they win all the awards, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, we've talked at length about how the songs on that record are somewhat problematic lyrically, not in any other way, just lyrically. Some of those songs maybe shouldn't have been so influential on young adults, but neither here nor there. I had to give credit where credit was due in this case, because musically, melodically, tonally, that album really was quite influential for me.
Understandably so, yeah.
And you in no way probably the only one to have that experience with it, right?
Right.
Yeah, like you said, there certainly have to be countless bands that came after that would mention not just Weezer as band, but Blue as album as, you know, one of their significant inspirations.
Yeah, because I mean, as you move forward into their catalog, you know, especially even just right after it, like you go with Pinkerton and it's already getting weirder and less fun and more, I don't know, cathartic for River, but it wasn't the product of just hanging out and making tunes.
And I guess part of that comes with the territory, right? Like it's hard to really have that garage ethos when you're one of the biggest acts of, you know, at least the mid 90s and beyond. I think all of us could sit here and say like, it wouldn't change us. We'd still be the same. I don't know how anyone would though. You know what I mean? The goalposts just shift too far.
Yeah. I like that way of looking at it though. Like the moving goalposts. That's a good way to phrase it. But I do feel like if you look at the music from this time frame, and in particular this record, that goalpost isn't moving.
Yeah,
it's attainable.
It's cemented to the field, and I love it.
All right, who's up next?
I can, Dan. Actually, if you wanted to dip a toe in.
Yeah, I suppose I can, because I can also sort of explain what I was doing and why this whole list now feels like a decent amount of cheating. Because there's both a very good chance that I have talked about these records at some other point where we've done things, and I know we've brought some of them up before, but also a gimmick that I have maintained whatsoever when it comes to my tastes in general and the stuff that I will listen when I'm not listening for work, so to speak. And, you know, look, if in this case it has to be a full on shoot, this is what I would really want to do if I had the talent and patience and startup capital to fire up a band. And I will bring your attention back to a playlist that I mentioned on and off over the last several months, and I invited Zach to actually collaborate on with me on Spotify. And it's kind of descriptive of the direction of the list, because it's the direction of the list is kind of the journey on how I got to the set list of the old man pop punk emo cover band I've started in my dreams. And yes, that is the full, it's like a Tribe Called Quest. You have to say the whole thing. Much like Jay's list, it's not a 1 through 5 or 5 through 1 kind of thing, more of a journey. So I'll start with where I think a good number of people our age were introduced to the concept of pop punk. Most of us weren't really cool enough to be on the cutting edge at this point, but for me and most of the mainstream, the introductory album to the genre was actually end up being one of the best ever in it. A record would go on to double diamond status here in the U.S., win a Grammy in 1995, the album that thrust Green Day into the mainstream, 1994's Dookie. And much like that Blue album, in a very similar time frame, I wouldn't be surprised if this record also launched a literal 1,000 bands because of its popularity and that simplicity. In a different way, not necessarily that, hey, I could write this song too because I have the similar experiences, but hey, I can make that noise too. Like I know I don't need guitar lessons for 10 years to go and make that noise. We can do that. We can do that. Maybe we can't ape it completely, but we can do that. The singles off this one are unmistakable, and they have become monuments on the U.S. rock landscape of the last 30 years. Like I said, the song's interesting, but simple enough that millions of young guitar players could start on When I Come Around and generally be able to figure out chords and maybe some scales and that. At least until Brain Stew came around and made that process way easier. It's the only way I could get started.
Basket Case was the first track from it that I learned. But since I had already known how to, or I had already been familiar with Pachelbel's Canon in D,
right.
bump it up a half step and you've got Basket Case.
How do we make the pop chords really, really loud?
Man, another great pull and another like super accessible pull. I don't think really until this moment that I kind of really thought about just how important like accessibility was to someone like me who was growing and listening and realizing like these are just people. These are just people that have a little bit more musical sense and have a lot more ambition to go out there and try to put this together. Like it's super cool that it's not like this exalted throne that, you know, perhaps Green Day and Weezer now sit on a throne, or at least, you know, are a lot closer to it. But, you know, back then, yeah, they were just us. That's all they were. It's really awesome.
Well, not only that, but like to further expound upon that thing that that accessibility that we've been talking about, like from a musical standpoint, if you think about the things they're coming along at a certain time in our lives as listeners, and, you know, hopefully as we continue to extend, as we are currently ancient and still trying to find access to new things. But that accessibility is what brings everyone in so they can work their way up to those records that are sit on a pedestal. I don't know if it's as complex as some other examples I could do, but you can't quite get through a full appreciation of American Idiot and all the intricacies that went into the writing of that if you don't have a little bit of a foundation in things like Dookie and Nimrod. And Nimrod. I'll go with that one.
And I would add Insomniac to
Insomniac,
that list,
yeah. That's what I went back and forth on.
Totally. Yeah, it's the old walk and crawl before you can run sort of adage. But the walking and the crawling still sounds really, really great too. It's not a they were here and now they're this much better. It's just a different, more polished sound. But the lesser polished stuff still also it still holds up over time.
And before I get accused of gatekeeping, I'm not saying that the only way to appreciate more advanced work is to sit through, take the 101 class and listen through all of the intro work. And I still believe that's the case in almost every genre. So that's not the case. However, you can get a fuller appreciation and you can get, you know, more immersed in something. And I think that Dookie was the pathway of immersion for many, many, many of our generation.
Without question. That and Blue, you know, those may have been like, if we were doing a rush like of formative albums from the 1990s for people of our similar age, like those probably would have made the top two.
Yeah, hold on to that thought for later.
Well, weirdly enough, I have a lot more in common with your two lists than I originally thought. First and foremost, despite the fact that we call this a top five, none of our three lists actually rank things from 5 to 1. We all missed the assignment there, and that's okay. We've done it before. Also, the theme that I kind of went through was, you know, not in terms of like a singular concept, but more so like if I was starting a band, what would be the things that were important to me? And then from there, branching out and finding albums that matched those concepts to a T. And that brings me to my quote unquote number 5, my first choice, which goes hand in hand with what both of you said, because this album I have it listed in my notes as kind of band by numbers. And that was not at all meant to be insulting, but more so to kind of illustrate that this band was kind of that quintessential, like, we're finding our way, we're figuring it out. We're still going to sound good in the meantime, but, you know, you're going to hear shades of some of our earlier shit. And it was just exactly like you said with Green Day, and exactly like you said, Jay, with Blue. You know, let's just get together. Let's just get some instruments. Let's get some microphones. Let's just try this out and see what the hell happens. And, you know, as was the case for Green Day and Weezer, that also worked out exceptionally well for Fall Out Boy. My first album is from Under the Cork Tree. There are some catalogs and even some albums where you can kind of hear not necessarily the evolution, but hear the overall getting it of a band almost in real time. I feel like From Under the Cork Tree is certainly one where you get like shades of, you know, some of the stuff from their debut album. And then you hear something like, I've Got a Dark Alley. I'm not saying the whole name, Patrick. I'm just not going to do it. Go to hell. I've Got a Dark Alley, for example, or Get Busy Living. Like, those could have been on Infinity on High easily. You know, you don't get the more layered instrumentation. You don't get the maturity. And why would you? This is literally album 2. But these are, you know, folks that came together that were like, let's just try and see if we could figure this out. And it just, for them, it just worked. Like, just like I said with Blue and Dookie, we could have written From Under the Cork Tree. I have no doubt about that. And that, as I'm starting to learn, maybe the greatest compliment of all.
We would have had shorter song titles.
We would have had way shorter song titles.
True.
What is it? Sugar, We're Going Down would have been the longest one.
yeah. Dance Dance. Perfect. Love it.
Yep.
One word twice.
Yeah. I have credit because it also has one of my favorite underrated songs of their catalog, the A Little Less 16 Candles and A Little More Touch Me, which would have been a little bit better with the original title, I would think. A little less Molly Ringwald, a little more Samantha Fox.
Yeah.
I wonder why they changed it.
To be less specific, most likely.
Yeah. I mean, they still made the references.
True,
oh, yeah.
True.
But without calling out the targets by name.
They tend to do that a lot in their songs. They're not shy about doing the whole Will I Am, I'm going to date myself to this exact time period.
Right.
True. And they, in fact, will never be 2000 and late.
Correct.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, if we ever do like worst lyrics redux, like that is absolutely making my list. I fucking can't stand that lyric.
I don't know, Zach. The first time we did that, your gimmick was all ludicrous, and I kind of dug that.
Dude, I could come up with 20 more. We got this for several eps. We're good. Well, Jay, I'm going to go on a limb and assume that your next song is not a ludicrous song.
No, it is not. That is correct. Nothing Ludacris has ever done has made me want to start a band. That is accurate. So this one might feel a little odd for me because it's college years, right? Like I'm in college, I'm doing college radio, and for me in that time period, this epitomized what a start a band album would need to feel like. And that is White Blood Cells, or the White Stripes. The album is proof that you don't need a wall of amplifiers or a lineup of virtuosos to make unforgettable rock music. Jack and Meg strip everything down to its essentials, even probably less than what other people might consider essentials. It's just guitar and drum and attitude. And somehow they make it sound bigger than bands with 5 times the personnel. The record is really rough around the edges, but in all the right ways. And the performances on it feel spontaneous. They feel urgent and completely unconcerned with perfection. It tears down the idea. White Blood Cells, it completely eliminates this idea that you need expensive gear and elaborate production or years of technical training before you're allowed to make great music. It celebrates creativity and chemistry and conviction. And it reminds you that all you need is that great riff, an unforgettable melody, and the confidence to sound like yourself. And that's more valuable than polish. By the time the album ends, it's not, you don't just want to keep listening to the music. You want to grab an instrument and find a cardboard box to beat on and someone else to play with and just make noise. That is particularly true with songs like Hotel Yorba and Fell in Love with a Girl, where it's, you can't even really tell what's going on in the song other than they're having a blast.
Yeah, I mean, when we have artists, that we talk about, like, this artist was responsible for this song, a lot of times you have a supporting cast of some sort. You have, backing vocals. You have, other instrumentalists that are playing, other songwriters, what have you. No, like you said, this is literally Jack and Meg. And a producer and a mixer and $5,000. And right. And this gold was like this is like DIY on steroids. It's incredible that this was not a bigger production.
Yeah.
But to back up with exactly how you described it, there is rough is the best way to describe it, but there's beauty in the chaos. And Fall in Love with a Girl is probably the best example of that now that I think about it. As you mentioned, it's not an easy song to follow if you don't know what's going on.
Right.
But if you're paying attention you can see the diamond that it is shining through.
Yeah, and if you're lucky enough to get the Japanese edition of it, it had their cover of Jolene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just phenomenal.
It's so good. It is an unconventional cover of that song.
Yes, and that's what draws me to it so often. It is the least cover of Jolene, but still.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also really partial to the first single from it, which I think it was the first single from it. I'm trying to remember, but Dead Leaves on Dirty Ground. And then a later deep album cut was I Think I Smell a Rat. I'm like those songs in particular, like I don't know why I love them so much, but I do. and to Zach's point, the whole $5,000 bit, like this was their third album. So to keep the scale of not really caring at all about expensive production is kind of impressive.
Yeah, it was. I was trying to find more information about the actual recording because, you mentioned that was their third album, but at least according to Wikipedia, this was their first time in an actual recording studio.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the first two were just recorded at someone's crib.
Yeah. They're still listed as Third Man Records though.
That's awesome. I mean, I guess they own the master, so heck yeah. Yeah, just reading about the recording process and just seeing Jack asking the recording engineer more than once, quote, not to make it sound too good. Like mission accomplished. And shout out to Jack for having that vision that like this is the sound that this album needs. And yeah, in spades.
Yeah. Dan, how about your next pick? What are you throwing at us?
I can get back on the road there because if we'll look at Dookie as the introduction point, this next record feels like the next evolution in that sound that I want to produce. It's still another group of California kids, and they're pounding out now pop punk standards with that energy and a razor sharp wit that was the next step for me, the desire to make those sounds myself. Which takes me to 2001 Start Static from Sugar Cult. I admittedly did come to this record via the post-breakup lament song Lost in You. But I found myself quickly gravitating to the track that's the most recognized, it's the most energetic on it, bouncing off the walls again. And like mainstream would know that as that one party track from the Van Wilder soundtrack. And if you'd ever heard that name, get off my goddamn lawn. So Sugar Cult was another of the long line of bands that marched right behind Green Day out of California to ride that pop punk wave as it became a thing in the mid and then late 90s. And while I would say they don't necessarily replicate the energy of Boast of Dookie on Start Static, they do bring a bright record that has plenty of hooks, catchy choruses, and those are pretty much like the things you have to be able to do in that genre. The record is one that stays with you a long time, even if it does sound like a lot of other bands, a lot of its contemporaries. It's a reminder of the importance of melody, especially in that pop punk, power punk genre, because that sort of seems to be the way to differentiate yourself. Yeah. Be able to write melodies that stay with people, and that's how you'll get noticed.
What a great album. Yeah, I mean, I unabashedly love this album and unabashedly just love Sugar Cult as a whole. It is, these are some of the catchiest tracks that all fit together on an album that I can think of, at the very least in the pop punk pantheon and perhaps outside of it too.
I want to have things to say, but I don't. And the reason I don't is I am a couple of years older than you guys, and I was pretty well done with pop punk by the time this happened. I know it hadn't really hit that third wave stride yet in 2001. That was really 2002 when we get all the like Transplants, Boxcar Racer, Bowling for Soup, etc. Do we include Kelly Osbourne in that? Anyway,
no, we don't.
She had an album that year too, man.
That's true.
But like, so for me, I couldn't pick Sugar Cult out of a lineup, so I just have to take your word for it.
Well, and again, that's the acknowledging that's one of the problems in putting a list like this together and isolating certain things to say, yes, this is the part of the sound that I would build. I'd put this on top of it, and I'd put that on top of it, because you're going to get a lot of things that could fit each and one of these boxes that you might want, that I might be trying to build a stack with.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of this list, that we're finding the best examples, but we could have made a list of the top 50 easily, each of us, I think, and not missed a beat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And make a completely different list if we're deciding we're putting together a different type of band.
Oh my God, totally. Yeah.
Hey, and here in a couple weeks, we may have a different answer for that.
True story.
Yeah, TBD.
Stay tuned.
Oh my gosh.
We don't call that a tease for what we're specifically doing. That is foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe even the step further to foreboding. You'll have to be the judge later on.
As long as it's not foreskinning, I think we're okay.
For fuck's sake.
Jesus.
Hey, Zach,
I'm just going to talk about music now.
So, what would be your next album, Zach, please?
We talked about the kind of concept of, just being able to get someone together and just like start a band and just try it and see where it turns out. And kind of going alongside that is that, you don't want to necessarily just start a band and then it's just a slog, right? And a lot of bands are, you're in there, you're in the studio, it's sweaty, you're doing take after take after take, and it's just not enjoyable. And at that point, you're like, why did we even do this? I'm sure that that's the point where a lot of bands start to separate, because that's difficult. It's hard to, even with some of your, closest friends or whoever, it's hard to, get over that sort of environment. And I can't guarantee that my next album didn't suffer from that to some extent. I'm sure that all albums do, but I would say at least if the net result was even half as fun, or I should say if the process was even half as fun as what the net result was, then it definitely would be something that would be inspiring to me as someone who also wanted to have a lot of fun while making music. And that is the 1998 release from the Beastie Boys, Hello Nasty. We literally start off with a track called Super Disco Breakin'. How could that song not be fun? It sounds like they're in the studio. It sounds like the three guys are just having an absolute blast. And like I said, maybe they're not. I tried to look for anything I could find, and maybe I just didn't look in the right places, but I could not find any discussions of conflict or strife or anything throughout the recording of this album. You do have a couple of tracks that have maybe a little bit of a deeper meaning. Remote Control comes to mind, and Me comes to mind as well, but that is absolutely the exception to the rule. Because for every Remote Control, you have Body Moving, and for every And Me, you have Intergalactic. A full blast for the most part from beginning to end, and one where I would absolutely be super stoked to say hey, yeah, I was a part of that, and let me tell you about the parties we had in the studio while we made this album. It was awesome.
I love that record. For me, though, if I was going with one of theirs, for me, it's Ill Communication. Again, that's that couple of years in age difference. I think showing
for sure.
Mine's the 1994, yours is the 1998, but you can't go wrong with the Beastie Boys. I mean, they you're right. They epitomize that fun in everything they do. Particularly, watch the video for Intergalactic, and you can't not want to join in with whatever they're doing.
Right.
I don't want to call that like kung fu moves, because it's not. I don't know what that is. But you do that with them.
You do that with them. It's natural.
I had seen at one point, I don't remember what I was looking at, but somebody called them the Ed and Eddie of rap music, and that is my favorite thing that I've ever heard.
12 out of 10. Spot on, Paul.
Well, because it was some argument about why, when you're talking about the kings of rap, it's always you hear things about like Eminem or even like Mac Miller, like whatever, but they are, especially if you're specifically talking about white rappers, but they're the Ed, Ed and Eddie, and they're just too goofy for that conversation, I think.
So good.
I wish I had more to add, but you guys basically said everything that I have already thought about this record. You never question the fact that these guys have a blast putting this together. And more importantly, that you never question that they have a genuine love for the source material, which for this record is that 80s hip hop sound and all those samples that made it onto the record. That this is exactly who they are and what they want that public image to be, because that's just them.
Yeah, truly. And I appreciate you guys bringing that up too, that it's not just that they had fun. They were also exceptionally talented at what they did. Yeah. And like you said, exceptionally passionate at what they did too. And both of those also shine through.
And also, I would add one more thing to that. I really should have put this on my list, apparently, because I have so much to talk about. But they embody the idea of like brotherhood in what you're doing, right? Like you brought it up too, that there was no like Discord or whatever in the recording of the record, or at least none that you could find. And they don't have, like, in my recollection, there's no public fighting or anything with those guys banding together to fight against a record label. Yes, but always on the same side of things.
Yeah. A united front.
So that type brotherhood. Yeah.
Which is such a cool thing to see in music, because I know it doesn't always go down like that.
I'm partial to some of that other weirdness that Ad Rock put together with, what's his name from Suicidal Tendencies, Steve Amory. They had a thing called BS 2000, and it's phenomenal.
I need to find that because I was not familiar.
It's so good. Particularly, I think it's like track 14 or something. It's called the Scrappy. We used to have Scrappy dance parties in the studio. Anyhow.
Amazing. Well, tell us about your not your number 3, I guess your third song. Is it particularly scrappy?
You know what? Scrappy is a really good description of this record. Because it's not their first album. It's not even their second album, but it is the band kind of finding their stride in the creative, chaotic, fearless, and odd world of constantly challenging listener expectations. So I'm going to include Science by Incubus on my list. Science, I'm not going to spell it out, but it's with periods in between everything, and I don't know why they did that. But for me, this was a record that makes you realize, this was probably the first album, truthfully, that allowed me to realize that a band doesn't have to fit neatly into a single genre to be great. Incubus blended metal and funk and hip hop and jazz and experimental rock into something that sounded completely like anyone else at the time. And particular emphasis on the funk part of things, because when they started, that's basically all they did. Then they added the DJ, then they started to get a little bit louder, and this was the epitome of them being loud. They didn't get a lot louder after this record. They started getting more pop accessible. Not that Make Yourself is a bad record, but most of my favorite Incubus songs are on Science. Things like New Skin and Vitamin. God, Vitamin, that's a fantastic song. But for me, it's that sense of limitless possibility but still being cohesive. They didn't follow a formula. They seemed to sort of discover what they could sound like by just pushing every musical idea as far as it could go. And it really felt like every member brought something distinctive to the table. And not just about a singer or guitarist, although I bet most everybody could only name Brandon Boyd, because he did eventually stand out as the primary member of the band. Also, showing up in movies and TV shows didn't hurt that. But for me, Science made it was another one of those things that makes you want to lock yourself in a garage with some friends and just see what happens when you throw shit at a wall and see where it goes.
It is interesting. It's extremely interesting to think of Incubus in terms of Science, and then to think of Incubus in terms of, Make Yourself, which was only like, what, 2 or 3 years later?
Yeah. Yeah. So Science was 97 and Make Yourself was 99. Yeah, 2 years.
Jeez. And it's like, it's a different band altogether. Not neither version of Incubus is bad. Both of them are quite good, I might say. But yeah, it's really interesting that that's kind of the evolution that they ended up taking.
Yeah, for me, it felt like, I mean, their trajectory and like the style of sound was, Science was them learning that they could go on tour and open up for Korn and Limp Bizkit. Yeah. And then Make Yourself was, oh, I want to headline that show.
Yeah, they're opening for me.
Yeah, we're going to polish this up.
Yeah, kind of not similar at all in sound, but maybe similar in the trajectory to like a Jimmy Eat World, where like early Jimmy Eat World like is nothing like the more popular stuff that hit in like the early 2000s. But is also really fucking rad too.
I was gonna say Bleed American almost made this list.
I wouldn't be mad at it if it did.
Right.
Kind of mad it didn't make mine. Now that I'm sitting here.
Did Bleed American make your list, Dan?
No, even though it would have also fit right away, right at home there. So my next step into listening albums, to be listening to albums over and over again and wishing that I had the talent to start a band that made them their noises, bumps us to 2003 and a more varied, even more melodic sound. I have to ask a question to explain how I got here. Do y'all remember a game on the Xbox, the original one, with the controller that was the size of a planet, like the first one? Right, where you needed a harness to hold the damn thing. Anyway, there was a game, it was called Outlaw Volleyball. It was a volleyball/fighting game that was one of the two video game platforms that propelled 2003's Making the Grade from Long Island Rockers' Diffuser. Get It On was the feature track on the Nile Rodgers helmed Outlaw Volleyball soundtrack. And I need to repeat that, actually, because a game called Outlaw Volleyball had a soundtrack put together and EP'd by Nile Rodgers.
Life is weird, man.
Right? Like, every time I think I've got the answer, the universe changed the question.
Yeah.
That's
the
amazing.
Other song you might have heard of was called New High, because that made its way onto NHL Hits with a Z, because it was 2003 Pro. So they didn't quite make it into Shell, but they were Shell adjacent at least. So the indie rockers had fully committed to a poppier sound on this, their third record, but it was that writing style that stood out to me when I had Get It On, New High, and admittedly an edited version of I Wonder banged into my head for days upon days on end, as they all took turns being featured on the in-store DVD that would play once an hour on an endless loop during my time at Media Play. And I had to come back to the record after I stopped working there to fully appreciate it, and the wordplay, and the sugary and infectious choruses, and surprisingly on point melodies. It's one of those rare records I can listen to now front to back, no skips, while also, and at the same time, singing along with every track. From the bubbly declaration that enough is enough and it's time for a change, that is the opener, New High, through the humongous sounding ballad whose antagonist still hasn't found what he's looking for in a long way from home. But I can say I just love the record unabashedly, and I wanted to make something like it myself.
I do want to talk about the music, and I will talk about the music in a second, but I do have to say that I want to know, Jay, and for our listeners, if you also mistook Outlaw Volleyball for Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, the other beach volleyball game that came out for the Xbox in 2003.
Very, very easy to do. It shared many traits. I don't know if DOA had a mode where, as you gained points and did super cool spikes, you would gain tokens that allow you to kick your opponent's ass right there in the sand. I don't know if that was part of the whole thing or not.
Considering it was in the DOA series,
it had to be, right?
It would stand to reason.
Yeah.
I got to be perfectly honest with you. 2003, I don't think I played a single video game that year.
Really?
Yeah, that was a rough year. That's the year I gave myself insomnia.
Oh, that is
That's a different story. That's sophomore year of college, somewhere in there. It's second sophomore year of college, where, I'm taking 23 credit hours worth of classes, working 40 hours a week, and doing on-air stuff for the radio and theater stuff. So I didn't sleep for days at a time.
Jesus. Yeah, that is not sustainable. I'm happy you made it through that, because Jesus Christ.
It was an experience. It was a trip.
Embracing the grind before that was its own t-shirt.
Ironically, that year there was a sleep study being done on campus that it was looking for recruits to stay awake for 72 hours straight so they could monitor the effects of it. And what's really wild is I would have done it, but I didn't have time.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That says it all right there.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say that, kind of like you had mentioned, I think it was with Start Static, that you weren't super familiar with it, Jay. I honestly never played either of the beach volleyball games that came out for the Xbox in 2003, and as such have really never, I mean, certainly Diffuser goes far beyond just, beach volleyball games, but never one that I really had taken the time to fuck with.
Not that far outside of that, though.
I did look up the record as you were talking about it, though, and learned that it's produced by the same guy that did Sugar Cult and Jimmy Eat World. So
Hey, there it is.
Yeah, it is. There's a theme there a little bit. It works.
You have a type.
I guess. I have a gimmick for this list. At least I'm staying on it, and I think I will. Oh shit, maybe I won't. I don't know.
Got a little suspense. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, don't keep us in suspense about your next record, Zach.
I will not, and I'm actually reconfabulating some things because I deliberately went out of order there. So I need to make sure I don't talk about the Beastie Boys again, because that's something I would absolutely do. But instead, I want to talk about another thing that would be a draw for me in starting a band. And that is, I've always been a fan of stories, of very long, drawn out stories with character development and rising action, denouement, the whole 9 yards. And I feel like it would be really cool to be able to put that together in some form of media. So since I'm already starting a band here in this sort of fantasy that we're doing, why not create a concept album? And if I were to create a concept album and would want a sort of prototype, a sort of template to really show me how do Googling how to do concept album, probably not going to yield that much, right? However, listening to The Wall certainly is. Y'all have heard it multiple times. Y'all have heard the tracks from it multiple times. I will not go into depth because you already know what I'm going to say. The story of isolation, the story of war, the story of loss, and the trappings of fame, all centering around the protagonist, who also happens to be called Pink Floyd in a weird turn of events. Really interesting how that worked out for them. As with many great stories, there is corollary to reality, with parallels being drawn between the character Pink and the real life experiences of Pink, in this case specifically Roger Walters?
That's not the guy.
That's not the guy. That's like the brother of the host from 2020. What the fuck am I doing?
I was going to say he's an investment banker somewhere in Delaware.
Dr. Roger Walters, DDS. Fuck me. Yeah, I'm not even going to ask producer Nikki. I know. I don't have a case here. His name is Roger Waters.
Yeah, that's the guy.
And the album does, kind of dovetail with some of his real life experiences, again, as most good stories do. There's discussions and metaphors and analogies about Sid, because of course there is. That kind of dotted so much of Pink Floyd's discography, both while he was with the band and while he was not with the band. But ultimately, just in terms of grading this as a concept album, certainly you could think of better ones. I think there's no doubt about that. But at least for the kind of concept album that I would want to build, I feel like The Wall would be right on the money to kind of give me the inspo to do it myself.
Not gonna lie, it surprised me a little bit when you said The Wall. Everything you like building up to that point, I thought you were going with Coheed.
And I thought of doing that, but there's no way to take one Coheed album by itself. That's the only thing.
Fair.
Their catalog is the answer to the question, but not one album.
Fair enough. Yeah, no notes. The only thing that my list where that album wouldn't fit into my list, because I did think of, Pink Floyd is pretty inspirational and whatever, is that I don't believe I could ever muster the amount of talent needed to create that kind of a record. Therefore, to me, that album feels daunting.
Yeah, we're not in Dookie territory here.
No. Musical unobtainium might be close to where we're at, because
right.
I mean, if you're going with that at the same, like I might have also gone with Dark Side, even though that seems like it's cliched, but it also just knowing the amount of work and the technical prowess and the concepts that went into creating that, just as daunting but a different level, walking down a different path for the same artists. But both are great examples of that, and both would be great picks for that.
1 and 1A in my head. Yeah. I could have easily written, 3 or 4 good sentences about Dark Side and not missed a beat too. Yeah, 100%. I think we circled back to Jay for your 4th album on this list.
I like it. But before we get to that next album, we do need to step aside for a couple of days, actually, in your earballs, because that clock on the wall says that it's all the time we have for today on the Stridex Medicated Pad Nostalgia Hour, and we need to make way for your late local news. But you'll want to come right back here for part 2 of this example of the world-famous Fairly KickAss Top 5 lists, where you'll hear more records that made us want to start a band. And if you yourself have ever aspired to the musical arts, let us know what records did that inspiring for you. Hitting us up on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. We are at Fairly KickAss, or you can get at us via email at fairlykickass.com. But until we meet again,